Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything that school didn't about job search and career growth. And you know what time of the month it is. It is one of my favorite times of the month because my partner in crime, Stacey Lewis, is back with me again. Hello.
Hey, Jay, what is happening? I should not call you Jay. That's my word for you. Hi, JT. How are you?
You absolutely can call me Jay. I love terms of endearment, and I feel I have earned one.
You are my Jay. You are my girl.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm so excited about this topic today. So, this is a broader topic for us. This is you and I talking about something. And folks, we have these prep sessions that are so much fun. Stacey, myself, and our producer, Lindsay. Shout out to Lindsay. She's so awesome. We get on these calls and we started talking about this. And this has come up several times now. We were talking about the impact parents have on their kids and some of the attitudes and actions and, just views on the world and the working world that they bring to the workplace that sometimes don't work in their favor.
Right.
And so, and both of us being in HR and recruiting, we both have some pretty keen examples of this. And while we've been talking about diversity and inclusion and belonging all these past episodes together, the truth is this is a much bigger conversation. Absolutely. This isn't us talking just about that, like BIPOC, for example. This is us talking about everyone today. What are you bringing to the workplace? What are your kids bringing to the workplace? And are we sure it's really serving you and them well? And so we wanted to get into that today. And, again, Stacey pointed out something brilliant right before we went live. She said, JT, parent means a lot of different things. We're really talking about those influencers in your life. Those first people in your life where you believed everything they said was true and right and correct? Well, that's pretty deep, because you bring that to the workplace. And so we want to hear from you to start. I want you to think today as you're listening to the session. And by the way, we're going to leave a ton of time open for Q&A. Right. I want you to think about maybe some attitudes or ideas you've brought to the workplace that somewhere in your mind, you're wondering if it's accurate or not. And I want to start off with one that I heard a lot from people growing up and in the career coaching world. Mm-hmm. So I have seen people coming into the workplace and they would come to HR and say, my boss has asked me to work late, has asked me to work over the weekend or work, late some nights to finish a project. And I went home and spoke to my parents and they told me in no uncertain terms, no, that I should say no. And the reason for that is that this is the beginning of my boss taking advantage of me. My boss is going to then now think that I can work late and work weekends all the time. And even though I'm not married or with a family, that's taking advantage of me as a single person. And I've got to lay the groundwork now so that they don't take advantage of me. And so that's a really interesting thing to say, right? That's pretty loaded, and I get it. I mean, there are a lot of people, a lot of parents out there that were in jobs they hated, that felt taken advantage of, that felt, the golden handcuffs, and they always had to do these extra hours that took them away from their kids and their experiences in their life. And so they're trying to teach their child boundaries, but a bit excessive, don't you think, Stacey?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so conversely, the one that I'm going to open up with is I've experienced people coming into the workforce and day one saying what they're not going to do. I'm not going to do this, right? I'm not going to do this. And so I think about, as parents, we love our children, right? We want them to have more than we've had. And you and I are not going to ever question the way somebody parents their child. But if you always tell them that, you have free expression, say what you want to say, we understand that. But structure matters. So if on your first day of work, you come in and you tell your supervisor, not going to do that, that's problematic. And I know that seems like a far-fetched example, but I guarantee you in the chat box, people will give you examples of people entering into the workforce. Real quick, I had a person who told me, I'm offended you have me reporting to a person that I am smarter than my boss. Okay, you have 2 degrees and you just scratched your ear with work. And so these conversations are happening. So I agree with that. And I love this topic, JT. Thank you so much for stepping out and talking about this, the parenting role. In HR, you and I know that parental person is the first employee orientation, right? Everything goes back to the workplace. They're the first form of there's some disciplinary action or some adverse action. They're the first recognition of orienting them into being collaborative and all of that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
sometimes I don't. Yeah, your first
work is in the family. Like you were saying before, right? Your first work is in your family. Your team is and so you really do take that structure and assume that however you were raised, however this was, that's how it is.
Absolutely. We put those ideologies in them from when they are, when they're young. People who are kids, people who have strong work ethics. 9 times out of 10, they've seen that in their home. That's been, portrayed in their home. Conversely, and again, let's say this, JT, because we don't want any of our viewers to be, I use the word, offended. We're not building into stereotypes. We're not talking about stereotypes, culture stereotypes, angry BIPOCs, hot, hardworking X, Y, and Z. We're talking about foundationally, what do we do as parents? So parents are on there. And then from the HR perspective, when we see that, do we have an understanding of where that came from and how can we groom that, right?
Yeah.
I really want to put that out there.
I agree with you. And I think that's where we wanted to head with this, folks, which is we wanted to start this conversation around what maybe our kids or workers bringing to the workforce that was instilled by their parents that might be off base. But the other side of that equation is exactly what Stacey just said. We as HR professionals, all my recruiters, my HR professionals, my managers that are listening today, you also have to, when something's happening with an employee and you're going, oh gosh, this feels off, get curious before you get angry and defensive and try to understand where it's coming from. And if it's okay, I want to give an example because we talked about this one previously. Mm-hmm. I've been in situations where someone's come in to interview. Mm-hmm. And I've asked them something like, what's your greatest weakness? Or tell me about a time you failed on the job. Mm-hmm. And you can see them bristle a little and they go, well, I've never really failed. Right. Or I don't believe I have any weaknesses. And it's like,
there you go.
And I know that somewhere in there they were coached, oh gosh, if you go to that path, you're going to look weak. They're going to criticize you. They're going to excessively use that against you. So they've now been, ill coached at home around that, probably from a parent that wasn't very good at interviewing. Mm-hmm. And I have to step back for a minute and go, okay, before I just say, you failed, maybe I can reframe this a different way, mm-hmm. And you were talking about that, like how when I get that reaction, can I take a pause and say, how can I ask them a question again in a way that doesn't feel so threatening,
Mm-hmm. So, and to that point, JT, when you start talking about parenting, it gets real sticky, right? People tend to, that's their most precious commodity, right? I have 3, I'll go toe to toe for them. And so again, it is not the point that we are questioning, because at the end of the day, it's parents' responsibilities of how they want to raise their children.
Totally.
What we're saying, though, on the receiving end, right? And there's not a lot of people talking about this. It's just people are getting fired. It's just people are not getting accepted in jobs, and they're staying at home longer than we probably want them to.
By the way, really quick, when they get fired, it now goes home and reinforces what the parents told them. Right? Because they're like, oh, see, you got fired. It's so bad. And if we can call this out more, I think we could really shake things up for some people and probably save some jobs.
Right. And so that's why we're talking about it. And one story I wanted to tell, I share with you, as I know an individual, and I'm actually, he's an African-American young man, very, very large in stature, very, very large in stature, about 6'3", 6'4", had a lot of problems in the workplace collaborating, communicating, just couldn't understand. Strong level of intelligence, but just couldn't make that collaboration on team. Come to find out, and spending some time with him, he was very open and honest and sharing and saying, when I was growing up, Miss Stacey, my mother told me that because of the way that I look in my statute, I was going to be very intimidating, especially to people who don't look like me. So she told me, you two are to be seen and not heard. And that's how he had, he changed jobs every 6 months because he just couldn't he was always seen and not heard. I don't hire people to be seen and not heard. I'm biased to action. I need you to move forward. But that's really and I think about that all the time. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. This young man he said, I can't shake it. My mother, who means everything, told me I'm to be seen and not heard because I'm going to intimidate others in the room that I'm in.
Which, by the way, every time he walks in and he's 6'3", 6'4", he's getting a look, which literally confirms what his mom's saying.
Correct.
Right? So everyone's going, "Whoa," and so he's triggered.
He's triggered.
I totally get it. And that's what we're really talking about here today, folks. We just want everyone to do some deep self-assessment, some deep introspection about what maybe you're bringing to the workplace that your parents taught you. And if you're a parent, like you said, you've got 3, I've got 2. Right. What am I teaching them that may not work for them when they get in there? And again, I think so much of it, you've brought it up, comes back to communication and approaches of communication in the workplace that just don't end up serving them.
So, JT, we're talking about, and I think for the viewers, let's talk about some of the ways that I've seen it manifest, right? That I've seen it manifest in HR. Again, and I like to keep saying this because JT, people get thinking about the parenting. You're the best. Nobody's better than you. Nobody. You should encourage your children. Absolutely. You should encourage them. Whatever you do, give it 100%. But create something in them, a foundation for them to because somebody's always better. Somebody's always going to be better. And when you put out the message, you're the best, then they have difficulty in the workplace or whatever, they're starting their own business when they find somebody who's just a little bit better, right? Or they've never heard no. JT, let me tell you, I'm in an HR 35 plus years. I can tell the employees who have never heard no. Just like the person I tell you, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Like true situation, love story, was working with an organization. The person told me, I should probably tell you that I'm adverse to authority. She said it, JT. She said, I'm adverse to authority. And so, being me, I said, well, a couple of things are going to happen. You probably should have a building with your own name on it, right? Because what does that? She goes, I'm adverse to authority. I when people tell me what to do, I'm going to completely do the opposite, right? Again, right? So she didn't last in our organization, or they've never been disciplined. Yeah. We're not telling you beat your kids because we don't want anybody taking me and JT off the network. Whatever your form of discipline in time, whatever that is, to course correct, if it's conversation, if it's learn at the speed of instruction, but just to run free, there's no consequences, because the workspace is not like that. There are consequences for actions that are demonstrated. Right.
And it's really great that you say that, because I've seen situations where people say, well, I made the best choice that I could. So, I shouldn't get in trouble, or I shouldn't be seen as failing because I made the best choice that I could. And we're not teaching enough that, we all try to make the best decisions we can in the moment with the information we have. And yet we still end up making mistakes. Right. And we learn from them and we move on. But I agree with you. There is a lot of that we're seeing right now with people feeling like, don't ever call me wrong because I tried. As long as I tried, I can't be wrong. Right. When in reality you can. You can fail even though you tried, and it's okay. It's okay. But we're seeing that, and we're on the receiving end of it in HR and in recruiting. You can send it, and I do get worried that these people will struggle to get hired and, like you said, retain jobs. You were mentioning a study that you read that I thought was pretty interesting before we jumped on today.
Yeah, Science Daily had a study, and it was a while ago, but I just love it. It was back in July of 2016, and they said researchers find links between parenting styles and work behaviors. Again, what we're talking about this, and JT, you do a lot of recruiting. When you start moving up into your in the organization, we're looking for individuals who can pivot quickly, right? Who have self-awareness, who know their emotional intelligence, right? Who can collaborate, who can say what they mean and mean what they say. All of these are behaviors that you gotta work on it, right? You have to work on it. I don't know of an organization that wants a CEO, that wants anybody that they're just 100% right. And there's no change. They want individuals who can somewhat challenge the status quo appropriately, right? again, if you're teaching your children, and I want to use this as an example because this is what I'm doing, JT. I want to teach my children. I am teaching my children. You can say pretty much what you want to say within reason, and there is a method that you say this. Just because it comes up doesn't mean that it needs to come out. Okay? When you open up your mouth, know what you're talking about.
Right.
Just don't use futile words. So, and so I'm working with him in that, and I'm saying because that's going to benefit you in life when you're having conversations. There's a way to address situations. Just coming in, saying what you want to say because I'm here, because I showed up, it doesn't always work.
Right. Right. Because I'm here, I have a right to say what I want. The other thing I've seen too is you can voice your concerns, but when the decision's made, if it doesn't roll in your favor the way that you wanted to go, you still need to know how to work on the team and not hold a grudge and, be disengaged, right? There's that whole other piece that we're not seeing in good collaboration as well. That, you wonder, where is that coming from the parental side? Because they had to learn it somewhere. And this is the thing that we want everyone to hear, right?
Right.
People come to the workplace. They didn't just make this up by themselves. They got it somewhere.
And pushing the envelope. It's okay to, again, we want the parents to be, to stay in power. It's okay to teach your children to push the envelope, but you also have to tell them when to stop.
Yes.
There is a time where they have to know when to stop, right? And again, we're not taking anything away from who they are as an individual. It is just a method of moving forward. And I'm passionate about this, JT, because I see so many individuals, and I don't even want to put age on it, but I just see so many individuals in the workplace who are struggling. They are struggling. The workplace is changing, and these behaviors, right? These counterintuitive behaviors are at a detriment. And so what happens is when there's an opportunity, because sometimes in HR we don't tell people about their behaviors, we just pass them over. He just wasn't that word fit that I told you about. He just wasn't the fit that I hate so much. But what was it about them? Did we ever tell Stacey that, when you're engaging conversations, you should allow others to speak?
Yeah.
Did we ever tell Stacey that you seem to, at times you appear to be disengaged when a decision doesn't go your way? Do we ever tell Stacey that work starts at 8 and you can't show up every day at 10 because you just feel like it because you've always done that?
Yeah.
Like, have these conversations taken place?
Yeah. And we get pushback, and everyone, I want you to hear, if you're in HR, recruiting, management, whatever, I know your initial reaction to what Stacey's saying is, that's not my job, but it is our job.
But it is our job.
It is our job, because that one conversation could change that person's career for the rest of their lives. Like, that's the kind of impact you have in that moment to pull them aside and walk them through it. I'm going to give you another one, and then I want to do some of these quotes. I have 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I want to raise empowered women, but I have seen women come into the interview situation, and it's so clear to me, somebody said to them that you need to really show your accomplishments. So I'm interviewing them, and it's the me show, right? I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I'm this. I never hear a we. I never hear that they were part of a team. And I get it. I can tell that they've been coached and told, you need to be confident. You need to prove that you've been accomplished. You have to do it 10 times better than everybody else in order, you've got to, especially if you're being interviewed by a man. So you can, you can just feel right?
It. But you can't come off aggressive. You can't be aggressive. Right. You can't
be angry. but they don't realize they're coming across super narcissistic. And then that to me is, okay, you're not a team player. And deep down, this person's probably an awesome team player, but they got wrongly coached to overdo it. You know what I'm saying?
So in that instance, JT, and I love what you say, when you see that, what do you initially think about doing? Because it is hard to coach somebody in the interview session, but what do you do in those circumstances?
So I clarify. And I clarifying that. Yeah. Like if you were coming at me that way, Stacey, I would say, I agree. I am loving your success. Your accomplishments are amazing. This is a huge teamwork job. Let's talk a little bit about teamwork. Tell me how you've worked with other teammates. So I'll direct them in that area of questions so that I can hear them start to talk about that. And then if they can't, then I know they really aren't a good team player.
Correct.
But if I'm asking them to tell me about that, then I usually get exactly what I'm looking for. And we're big about supporting each other and, really complimenting our teammates and propping them up. Tell me about a time you've done that. So I'll explore it before I just write this person off.
I love that, JT. So that's when you say that we do have a responsibility, right? We have a responsibility. Anybody in HR who says that's not my responsibility, well, I don't want to say I shouldn't be in the game, but HR, we're about people. And so again, I applaud you for really taking time to have this conversation. And I know some of the viewers are like, wow, this is something different, but we are seeing it. I mean, with all and now you have children who are at home in school. Let's talk about what that's going to look like. They're not having any interaction, right? Everything is the computer. Everything is, I have one at home. He's in school right now. So as parents, what are we going to do, right? Because we don't know how long we're going to be in this space to demonstrate, to teach them how to be collaborative outside of this screen. Like, so much is at stake for the future workforce. That's why this conversation is so timely.
Okay, and let's just talk about everything you as a parent are saying about your job at home while your kid's home, right? All the people that are working from home right now. How many people have no filter, and all the complaining about your job and about your peers and about your managers. If you don't think your kids are absorbing that, they're 100% absorbing that if they're in the room.
Exactly.
And so all these young kids, what's their association with work? It's a headache. It's horrible. People are difficult. We have to think that through right now. It's the whole next generation of workers is going to hate work just based on what they're viewing at home.
So I think that's why it's incumbent on us as, HR professionals and just leaders. I was on a call the other day, and one of the individuals I was speaking with, she had a young child, and the young child was crying. And she looked at me, she goes, "I'm sorry." And I just stopped her because, I say this all the time. I said, "Listen, we came into your home. We didn't ask you if we didn't ask permission. We just told you if you want to have continuity of pay, we're going to put a camera, you're going to get Zoom, stream live, hop in, all of this, and you're going to work." That's his home. That's his home. Recognize that. We recognize that, and we're going to support you. When that is demonstrated, to your point, conversely, now the young person can say, I remember a long time back in the 2000s when the pandemic was going on, but I remember my mother's leader always making me feel welcome. When I have my staff meetings, some of the parents, they have their kids right next to them doing the homework, and we're having a staff meeting. The canvas is clear. And I think that's what part of this conversation is. As parents, let's really develop that. And as leaders, let's support that. The canvas is clear.
Yeah, everyone here today, explore it. Sit back and think about all these different ways in which parental influence, your own parents, your influence on your kids, the impact it's having. If you can come up with one idea to do it differently, whether it's for yourself in the workplace or how you coach others or you coach your children, the ripple impact of this session today, I think, is huge because no one's talking about this stuff, right? Nobody's talking about it. I want to share some thoughts that we're getting. So Colleen over on YouTube, hey, Colleen, said something.
Hi, Colleen.
She said, "I think the Western culture is very different to the Eastern culture. My parents would tell me to follow the company's policy. If my boss requested us to work late, then do it." See, so there's that cultural differences. It's all over the place. We've got another one, a Terraporta. I don't know if I'm saying that right, over on YouTube. "My parents grew up in the Jim Crow South. So I was socialized to tolerate being treated unfavorably as a Black individual. I had to eventually unlearn this after many years of suffering," right? And you can speak to this, Stacey. You've mentioned it a bunch of times too, like what you have to teach your children about being out in the world, right? And being in the workplace. There's different nuances there.
And I appreciate. I'm sorry. Who the person on the YouTube? Everyone on YouTube. That's so true. Everything, I think I shared with you, I didn't have interactions with anybody who didn't look like me until I went to college, right? I went to college and I was like, oh, this is new. But growing up, I was always told, right? I was always told, be mindful, okay? Be mindful because you're going to always have to, your A, right, will be their C. So you can't come with anything less than an A. So when you're told that, kind of what you're doing, your A will be their C. They will be able to get away with C. You can define they whoever you want to, okay? But you know who your A is as being a person of color. And so how did I bring that to the workforce, right? And I told you I was definitely an overachiever for some other things that have happened in my life, but I've always been an overachiever, always want to be at the top of my game, always have, and I didn't want to put that in my children. I have a Black son, I have an African American, and I'm telling him right now, come correct.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have to come correct. Right? But I'm mindful, JT, I'm taking my own. How much pressure am I putting on him? Really? How much pressure am I? He already knows there's just some things that we're not going to back down from, but how much pressure am I putting on him as a young man in this world when I'm telling, come correct. When he fails, what will that look like? Does he have the tools when the day that he doesn't come correct, as long as it doesn't threaten his life, and he knows those situations where not coming correct are not suitable, and he knows what those are. But there are some of them that it's okay if you didn't come correct that day.
Right.
Am I giving him that message as well?
Yeah. It's so interesting. David on YouTube says, quote, "I didn't hire you to do the best you can. I hired you to do the job," is a comment he heard before in terms of his career. And I think that's a lot about what we're talking about here today. Right. So one of those nuances that we're seeing a lot is people are coming in and go, well, I did the best I can. Right. But that's not what we paid you to do.
That's not what we want you to do the job. Right. Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So true. So we have a question. How do you assertively challenge white culture in a company that tends to undervalue you because you are a person of color?
How do you assertively challenge white culture, that an organization that tends to devalue because you're a person of color?
Yeah, the problem is that the whole fact that how do you get an entire white culture to think differently, right?
Yeah.
That's got to start from somewhere.
I think, in that situation, one, I would tell the person, know your truth and speak your truth, right? So whatever that is, show up the way that you know that you are to show up, right? Mm-hmm. And if it does not work, then you need to, here's the challenge of seeing people vote for their feet, because you don't want to have people run away from situations, right? We're not teaching that. But there are some situations that are not conducive for everybody. Right. And it's okay to address that. And to your point, we're not going to change the mindset of everyone. But I do think in some situations, communication is key. In one of our settings, we talked about, JT, asking questions. It's interesting you should say that. What did I demonstrate to you that would allow you or brought you to that conclusion?
Right. Or make you think that way. Yeah.
Make you think that way. When you start asking, remember, JT, we started this way. There's a way that your children can say anything. It's just how you teach them to say that. Right. So that's the same way of saying, are you serious? Like, what's wrong with me? But it's interesting that you should say that. What behavior, now point out, did I demonstrate that makes you think that way or call that out? When you start asking those questions, right, either two things are going to happen. One, the individual, and you're going to have to keep asking them, especially knowing your culture. You got to keep asking them, and keep asking them. Either the behavior is going to change, or the individual is going to realize that, you know what, my value, my contribution, who I am and what I represent is not for this organization, and make a different decision.
Right? I have to say, I love the way you phrase that. Because if somebody asked me, JT, what behavior did I display that made you think that or assume that? One, I would probably give you the behavior. But two, it would immediately make me think, am I assessing that behavior correctly? Right. That's just where I personally would go. So that's why I love that frame. Because it's really getting them to shift their perspective, hopefully.
Because, it's not my responsibility to teach. And we've said it's not my responsibility to teach white America about me. Like it's that we've said that, but it is my responsibility in the workspace. If you are not identifying or you're not valuing what I am contributing, to get an understanding as to why, because I could course correct that behavior. But if you can't identify the behavior, then clearly there is something different, and I probably may need to pivot in a different direction. Great question. Definitely. Thank you.
It really, really is. So one question here is, and more of a comment, Rob said, so many people self-sabotage because they can't handle that no, or that we didn't choose your idea. And I would agree with Rob. There is definitely a trend around that, which is if I don't try my hardest, then if you don't pick me, I have a defense, right? Which to me, I feel like comes from like parents really pushing perfectionism. So
Well,
do you see what I'm saying? If you have to be perfect and you get exhausted and fatigued from being perfect, well then if I know I didn't try my hardest, I have a valid reason. It's almost like that. Well, I crammed for the test and that's why I didn't get a
right.
good grade.
And also JT, love that. And also the perspective of, sometimes as parents, we don't say no. Because again, we don't want to. We don't. As parents, we're a don't kill that inner spirit. Let them have freedom. I'm not challenging any of that. You should raise individuals who are productive, right? Who can speak, who can navigate all the rivers of life. But no is part of the rivers of life. Okay, I'm going to talk straight because this is one of the areas that no is one of the rivers of life. And so if you've done all that you can, you've navigated, no is a response. And it doesn't mean that you're less than. It just means in this situation, we're not going to go with that idea.
Right.
Now, a person who knows how to navigate the rivers of life, they accept that and they come back with another idea. Because at some point we're going to say yes. If we're not going to say yes for the sake of saying yes, right? Let's we don't want to talk about the participation trophy. I don't want to set all that up. But at some point, if you come with an idea that we're going to say yes. But that no factor, I know you're seeing it, JT. No in the workplace is, as Rob said, is sending people in a headspin. How dare you? How dare you not take my idea?
Right.
How dare you?
I totally agree. So listen, folks, Stacey Lewis and I today, Stacey's from HRInterrupted, amazing. Today's topic is all about parents and what they teach their children and how they then bring it to the workplace. Here's my challenge to all of you listening today. Right now, I want you to try to, if you can, write down in the comments one thing you know that your parents taught you that you've brought to the workplace that you've maybe come to question. Because that's one of the hard things is maybe realizing that the people you put on a pedestal your whole life that you thought were perfect, that taught you everything, may not have been right. I would be really curious to hear from you all today. What's something that you realize that maybe your parents weren't right about when it comes to the workplace? Let's see what you come up with. Share those with us here. We want to see those comments. Another comment we got here is I recently learned to question a company's interest in ensuring their employees are a cultural fit because fitting in can make you miserable if you don't fit the culture of the company. I agree. We've had multiple conversations about this around fit. I want to tie this back to the parenting thing, though. I see a lot of people coming and saying, their parents said, make sure you're a fit. So they start asking a lot of questions in the interview to figure out if they're going to be a fit for the organization a little too soon in the process, if you know what I mean. Like we haven't decided that you are moving forward in the process, but they're almost interviewing the company more than the company's getting to interview them, which is only something recent that I've seen. Historically, I've always felt like people didn't interview the company enough, right? The company's asking all the questions they weren't. But I'm starting to see this trend now where people are sort of badgering first round interview with a recruiter. And they're coming across like, don't waste my time. If you don't meet my criteria, right now, which that worries me a little too. And I think that's a parenting factor. Have you seen any of that?
Wow, JT, that's interesting. That's fascinating to me. And I'm going to tell you why. For so long, you've been doing this. Interviews used to be one-sided, right? They just used to be, I'm coming in, I'm going to put on my best show for you, and hopefully you hire me. And now we know that interviews are a conversation.
Absolutely.
They are definitely a conversation. You're assessing if Stacey Lewis has the knowledge, skills, and abilities and the engagement skills to be successful in the role. And I'm acknowledging if the organization, right, instead of using the word fit, if the organization's cultures, missions, values, and beliefs are in alignment, as opposed to fit, are in alignment with my where I am in my deliverables. And so I find it interesting when you say early in the interview, they're asking a lot of questions about the culture.
Yeah.
I support that because you should know, you should know what you are engaged, you're coming in. Again, it would be the way that it is delivered, right? It would be the way that conversation is delivered. Because I'm all about finding out. I don't want to waste your time as a recruiter. You don't want to waste my time. If this is not going to work for me,
I agree.
Right? But if it's So is it coming off like they may know something about the organization and they're trying to find a little bit more? Or are they just coming in like, hey, I heard, like, what's, because I'm fascinated. That's great.
I think the concern is that I think a lot of people are coming in and saying, I need the perfect job.
Okay.
I need the perfect employer. I'm going to be, my parents have told me to be choosy about who I work for. Okay. But I think sometimes there's a bit of an excessive choosiness in the same way. See, I love that you said we got to kill the word fit and replace it with alignment, because fit implies there's only one right fit.
That's right. That's
alignment it, JT. Offers a lot more wiggle room there because we can all be very unique, but align on the things that matter most. Right.
Thank you, JT. Thank you. Fit aligns a puzzle that there's only one way that you could get in here. And so for so long, Jay, a lot of people hid behind not hiring people because they were not a fit. What did Stacey demonstrate through this interview process that demonstrates her knowledge, skills, abilities, and her engagement skills are not in alignment with HRInterrupted's core values in our culture? Right. When you start asking people that question, you're going to get a whole different perspective than she's just not a fit.
Which is, when you get told you're not a fit, you're convinced you did something wrong, right?
Correct.
You weren't that one right fit.
You were not that one right fit.
Versus if we talk about it wasn't an alignment for this role, well, that's a different story entirely. Totally different story. It's so interesting. I do get concerned when I see that that a need for the job to be perfect, because there's no perfect employer.
There's no perfect employer.
No perfect employee, right? So we got to be careful about what we're teaching people right now, for sure. Laura says, should we coach hiring managers prior to interviewing potential employees? Oh my gosh. Laura, I love that you asked this.
Take it away, JT. I know you got this one. Take it away, girl.
I feel like nobody should ever be given a management title unless they are given a course on interviewing. And honestly, if anybody's listening out there, sadly, most businesses don't have enough of a well-developed HR training development protocol. They don't have the funds to do that. The first day you become a manager, you should go out and get tools around interviewing on your own. If your company can't do it, on your own, because it's just, it scares me how many poor interviewers are out there because they haven't had any coaching.
Poor interviewers. I love that. Like, that should be like management 101. And I always say leadership actions precede leadership titles. So if an organization knows that they are building a strength event, we should be offering interviews. They should be part of some type of a coaching training. Interviewing is an art on both sides, right? We talked about this, JT, again with parents. It's an art on both sides. I just had the honor last week with an organization called Corporate Minority to host an interviewing as an art. And I was telling the candidates, do not come into an interview and read me your resume. That's why I invited you. Don't spend 20 minutes on your resume. That's why, especially you're moving up. I want to know how you're going to embrace the role. Come in with your plan, right? Yeah. Come in with your plan. And then for the management, to Laura's question, let's stop writing these questions. Tell me about your background. Did I not send you a CV, a resume that's 4 pages long that demonstrate what I've done for the last 35 years? Like, it's both sides. So I love that question. Let's write questions, right, that are going to assess what we want. And not this notion it has to be an hour long. No, if you write 3 solid questions or whatever that's going to be. So I love that. Let's train them early on the process, because interviewing is an art. It is not just sit down there, read the resume, and then we're going to call you in 2 weeks.
I agree. And I think the problem, to your point, is if you haven't been coached in interviewing, you do ask all those ridiculously basic questions, and you end up judging. You end up not really learning anything about the candidate, and you end up judging them based on their personality.
That's right.
Which is that time and again, people get hired on their personality and can't do the job.
And cannot do the job. Because we tell you in the interview, a lot of times in the interview, you let know if the person can do the job. That's why you want candidates to come in and talk about how they're going to embrace the job, right? Yeah. And giving you bona fide plans. That's right. That's another webinar to talk about the art of interviewing. JT.
Oh my gosh, we could totally do that. All right, I want to give a shout out to some of the people who are willing to share the things that they learned. Yes. Sylvia did say she just wants you to know, navigate the rivers of life. She said she loves the way that is phrased, which I agree. I love that.
Hey, Sylvia, thank you.
Big Kev said his parents said, stick to the role or the job that you have and don't burn bridges, which how many people stay in jobs that they really shouldn't stay in anymore?
Right.
Right. They're not coached on how to figure out if they should stay, figure out if they can fix their situation. But if you really figure out you can't, they stay. And what happens? They become miserable. They become passive aggressive and they become disengaged and they get fired. And now you got fired from a job that you didn't want. Talk about a hard rebound, So Big Kev, I'm glad you're putting some shades of doubt in on that one. Diana said perfectionism. That's a big one. I think a lot of kids get hammered with that and they get into the workplace and it's really, really hard. My sister was telling me that she was reading something recently. She remembered a parenting book early on. She has 2 sons. Mm-hmm. And they said, always ask your kid, did they do their best work? Mm-hmm. And she said, that's fine for certain types of kids. But if you end up raising really high performers, mm-hmm. If they've done a great job, they say, look, I got, a great job, I got an A or whatever. And you say, but did you do your best work? You actually put doubt in them and make them think they could have done better. Does that make sense? And she makes a lot of sense. She's never heard it that way before. And she said she realized that with one of her sons, that was completely how he was taking it when she would say that. So that's my point. Like we get these parenting techniques and we apply them. And if we don't really step back and keep an eye on them, they may not be right for every child. Albino says company loyalty. See, that one I was raised on.
That one.
Lost it. I left my job after 2 years. They lost it. You're going to ruin your career.
Let me, what's that person's name?
Albino.
I love that one. Company loyalty. Let me talk about that one. I am all for when you are at an organization, you should give everything that you have for your role, right? I'm all for that. I've been in HR 35 years, and what I'm going to tell JT, I'm going to tell all the HR business. But when you make the decision, and it's time for you to move on, right? Don't burn bridges. Don't resign today and tomorrow, but make the decision for your family. Because I have been in situations where we've had a person work from 8 to 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, we've called them in a room and we've told them today is their last day.
Yeah.
And I hate to put it in that term. What I'm saying is, it is what it is. Yeah. And so sometimes people feel, oh my God, I have to stay here. You got to be loyal. Yes, you should. But the organization also, we have a role to play into that. That's why HR is not for the faint-hearted. JT, when HR is done right, it's not for the faint-hearted. It is not for the faint-hearted. And the days of, we just read resumes and we just do class and comp and all that. We are massaging. We are protecting the hearts and the integrity of the organization's biggest capital, the human capital. Yeah. There is a sense of loyalty we have to show to the workplace. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. I'm sorry. That's my baby.
If you're in the job, be in the job.
Be in the job.
Loyal. However, I got to tell you something I've been seeing on TikTok. So you're going to let me get on my rant for a second because it relates to this. So a lot of people have been talking about salary negotiation and their company isn't giving them raises. And so we said, well, you have to know your worth. That's been a big trend.
Right.
So really pushing people to go research, and they're saying, I'm seeing these other jobs that are going to pay like $5 more an hour or 15% more in salary a year than, the competitors. And they're saying, how do I get my boss to pay that? So we talk it through and we say, you got to prove your value and explain how you're going to save or make them enough money to earn that and go through that. But still you get pushback. Some employers just have it in their head. And and I know what we're talking about. There are some hiring managers, and it's unfortunate, team, but they decide you're the $12 an hour person and you're always going to be the $12 an hour person.
You're always going to be the $12 an hour person. That's right.
You're never going to go up. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself is if you realize that you've hit the sticking point, you should find that next job and you should take it.
That's
you
right.
should absolutely take it. And don't go back and say to your boss, look, they're offering me $17 an hour, match it, because your boss will match it, be mad at you. And the first chance they can get rid of you, they will, right? Because the relationship isn't there. You got to go to that next job, because what you're then doing is teaching that company. They're going to go, well, I'm going to go replace them at $12 an hour. When they find out they can't, you're now helping the industry and the economy re-level set its salary rates. Do you know what I'm saying? Because if you really can go find yourself a better rate, go do it.
Go do it.
You're resenting your employer. It's not a good relationship. You're not giving it your all because you don't feel like you're being compensated fairly. So every person out there on that respect, because that loyalty thing
trips up a lot of people. Work is a relationship, JT. Work is a relationship. At any given time, the person can say they want to break up and be okay with that. If you're not going to be, just like a marriage or partnership or whatever, if you're not going to be give that person your best anymore, let them know that they matter, move on. And it's okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Elvon. That was great.
It was really good. So Jolene says her parents told her work is a means of survival. It's not for your passions and interests. Okay. That breaks my heart. Right? Like you don't have to, your job doesn't have to be the thing you love most to do in the world. Right. But if you're not at least interested in your work, then it's really drudgery. It really is. You got to try to find something in that one. That's a tough one.
We spend a lot of time at work, JT. Like you would hate to go someplace that you hate being there. Yeah. We spend a lot of time at work. But JT, back in the day, that's people work to survive. Back in the day, and we could define back in the day, people work to survive. That's why as the generations are moving forward, and now you have a workforce that says, like, I like your job. I really like your job, but I am going to go to my child's play or before, whatever, or I'm going to do this. And when it first entered, they put these titles and we have to put titles on people and they just can't be people. People are like, oh my God, they don't want to work. No, they do want to work. What they're saying is we're not going to work 15 hours. So at the end of the day, you can give me a gold Rolex watch. You don't even give me a Rolex, a Seiko watch. Yeah. What we're saying is that we're going to give you our best 4 hours because we matter. Our families matter. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of companies that have the less sexier roles or the jobs that feel a little monotonous, I think the ones that win in that game make it such a great place to work and make it family balanced and encourage you to pursue your passions and interests that you want to come work at that job because you know what it lets you do in the other hours of your day, right? So I think even then you got to find the environment that supports those passions and interests in a way that makes you want to do that job. It's fascinating.
JT, I always say this too as we move on. I don't ever use the word work-life balance. I don't use the word work-life balance because balance means at one time one has to become more important than the other, and a person should never have to choose their work over their life. Right. I call it life because life comes first. Work blend. When organizations support the workforce, that their person or their life, in conjunction with their deliverables, are allowed to blend, you get the best deliverables. So in our organization, we say we're advocates of life, work, blend, not a balance.
That's one that gets taught by parents wrong.
Right.
So see what I'm saying? They're looking for the wrong thing. So so this is such a beautiful example of what we're talking about. Stacey's company has changed how they explain it and how they approach it so that people can look at it differently, so that we can get a different result. It's just so important right now that we change up both sides of the equation, right? Because parents are telling you the wrong thing. I hate to say it. Colleen says, my parents used to teach me to be humble by saying I'm not that good at work, so I need the boss to train me more. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely wrong. I'm good enough, so I get hired. My parents also taught me to choose the career that pays the bills, not the job that I'm really passionate about.
Wow.
See what I mean? There's just so much out there. And Colleen, so this is why I'm asking you all to say this today.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you.
You can have the confidence, and we'll back you up. You've got 2 people right here. Go do what's best for you.
Do what's best for you. It's parenting is fascinating, right? You have 2, I have 3. Parenting is fascinating. Real quick story. My husband has 2 graduate degrees. Education. We have degrees. We were always raised at education, right? My parents said, "You're not if you're going to go to college, when you're going to go to college." Like that's the way that I was raised, and so I followed that path. And one of my children followed that path begrudgingly, and it didn't work out for them. Mm-hmm. And I remember my husband being, really bothered that, college was not what was going to happen for, her, and he wanted to make some drastic decisions. And I told him, let's take a step back. I said, we did that because that's what we were told to do, and that's how we were raised. Clearly, she's telling us by her actions and what is happening is that maybe college right now she's been in school, so her mind is not in it, right? And so for my husband, really a difficult conversation. She needed JT. She
Yeah.
needed to do what she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now she regrouped. She took time off, right? It was hard as a parent because JT, let's be honest. Come on, I'm gonna talk straight. I don't want to be the person at the barbecue that says that my child is not at USC, that my
Uh-huh.
child is taking a gap year. I don't want to be that person when everybody's talking about Stanford and Georgetown. I don't want to say my child is finding herself. Come on, I'm gonna talk real with you guys.
Right.
However, my daughter, we needed to let her do it. Now she went to local junior college, graduated at the top of her class. Now she's at Cal State Fullerton on her trajectory, and she's starting her own business that's doing well. What if we would have said, no, you're going to do what we say, and we wouldn't be where she is? And she came back to us and she said, Mom and Dad, I know that was hard for you. Thank you. It was hard for us, JT, because we didn't want to be the people at the barbecue to say that our daughter was not in SC. Come on, talk straight.
Oh
It's
my
about
gosh.
us. It's about us.
And that I beg every parent listening to this conversation right now, because I am right there with you. And I was the same way. And I think a little bit is because we are in HR and we've seen what's happened when people are pushed down those paths and put themselves in massive debt for the degrees to be forced into jobs that they don't really love, right? All that sort of stuff. So I've been taking that same approach with my daughters, and it will pay off in the long run, but it is hard. I know as parents, we want to be able to be proud of that, but we just need to be proud that they're making their own way and figuring it out, right? It's so true. It's huge. Christopher said, my parents taught me to do my best, and it led to perfectionism, which was not the best method when the industry I'm in often had lean cultures with many projects that required just good enough on a tight timeline.
Wow.
That is absolutely
That's well said.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
It's very well said. That perfectionism thing, it's a big one.
You know what happens, JT? When you come in the culture of perfectionism, then you have a difficult time collaborating, because a lot of people, come on, JT, they show up to the workplace bare minimal. Mm-hmm. We sometimes celebrate mediocrity. Oh man, I'm gonna talk, JT. We sometimes celebrate mediocrity.
Yeah, we do.
So when you have that on a team, we don't call it that, but when you have a person who's a perfectionist, then there's a lot of pressure on them, and then sometimes they can't cope because they blame it. Oh, everyone's just mediocre. Not everybody's mediocre. They're doing the best that they can. They're doing the best that they can. But when you have that, when you've been told to do that perfectionist, that's a hard line to toe, because you have to understand everybody is not that way. And typically people who are perfectionists, it's either my way or the highway. And so it's hard for them to shift. So I'm glad, that he was able to make that pivot. Great. Well said.
It's funny. Kathleen was given the opposite of some of what we've been talking about. Her parents said, you cannot question any authority over you at all, which we've seen people coming in questioning absolutely all authority when they don't really have the right to do it. She's had the polar opposite. Both of those extremes are bad.
You're not a robot at work. And you, especially to the person who talked about, how do you navigate maybe in a culture that appears to not be in alignment with who you are. Mm-hmm. You have the right, and we should change our children. You have the right to ask questions. That's how you learn.
Right.
That's how you learn. That's how you move forward. And authority, just because you are authority by position, doesn't mean that you are authority by thought process, by deliverables, by results. Right. Now, again, there is a way to navigate that conversation. There's a way to navigate it. I would not encourage you to go to your boss and say, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
It probably might not work out for you, but you can say, when you say this to me, I would like to get clarification, right? Can you clarify when you say this? Because this is how I'm hearing it. And typically we land on different sides of the spectrum. You see what I said? That's why you tell your boss, you don't know what are you talking? What do you want from me? Right? I said that in that one sentence. Can I get clarification? Because we typically, when I'm experiencing this, I move one way and it seems you want me to move the other way, and we land on different. It's all about being savvy, and we need to teach our children to be savvy.
Yeah, I totally agree. One comment that's coming up from Teresa Porter, she said, it's very important to note that parents provide a source of social cultural capital as well. If our society becomes a racially equitable one, more parents can offer social capital. And I think that is so interesting because it's true, right? we talked about this, why we didn't want to make this necessarily a race discussion today.
Right.
We do have to talk about social capital, and that comes with different forms of economic privilege, for example. And then out of that, what comes your mindset in the workplace, because that can correlate to the types of jobs your parents had and how that spills down through, right? You have lots of people still to this day, they're the first ones going to college.
Right.
The first ones going into the corporate setting, yet they're being coached by parents who were never in that corporate setting.
That's right.
So there's all those changes to consider too. It's tough.
And I think that's why when you say, JT, that the workplace is a village. And I'm so honored to be, where I am in my career. I'm so honored to see the workspace changing.
Yeah.
Right. I'm honored to see that in circles that I've had the honor to do. That's why I created HRInterrupted. I wanted to create a space where where HR influencers could understand what we do and how the impact that we have. We should be the synergy of the culture of the organization. We should be driving that. Sure, there are rules and policies that we have to follow. We know that. That's been driven to us for forever. But I think somewhere down the road we lost the human spirit.
Yeah.
And so for someone like that who's a first generation in the workplace and they've had parents who may not been able to guide them in that road, do we just cut them off? Is that the situation where we just say, he's just not going to get it, I'm just not going to do anything? Or do we take a step back and look at their potential and see what they can offer? And I've had people say, Stacey, I am not a social worker. I'm not telling you to be a social worker. I'm not telling you. What I am telling you to do is do your job in HR and do it well.
Right.
And know what your role is. And your role is to create a work environment that is safe, that is healthy, that has psychological safety to the event that you can, that is prosperous, that is fun, that the workplace can thrive if they choose. You got to put that if they choose on there, JT, because everybody doesn't want to go down this road.
That's
and HR can't hold that. But we have the accountability to do that.
I totally agree with you. And I can't believe it. An hour always goes way too fast. That leads right into what I want to say as we wrap this up. So I just love discussions like this because I know everyone sitting here today, we've amassed a following for these sessions of people with really open ears, open minds, open hearts. And so I love you all for that, because that's what's going to change this world that was Stacey was talking about. When we come at it more open-minded and curious and not immediately reacting to the way that person acts and trying to understand how we can serve them and thinking about the impact we're having on our kids. Like, I'm just excited about this. And I keep saying it all the time, the bigger the disruption, the bigger the innovation. We've had a lot of disruption in HR, over these last several years, prior to the pandemic. Let's talk about the Me Too movement and the realization there, and Black Lives Matters and all. I know we feel completely shaken. I know we feel like we've just decimated to the core. But out of this is going to come amazing stuff, because we are more aware than we've ever been before. The fact that you and I are getting to have this constructive conversation around this right now, and knowing it'll have a ripple effect that everyone here will be thinking about their parenting in a different way, that just makes me happy, because it has to happen. We've been too siloed in HR and work. We have to be thinking about the more holistic approach to it, don't you think?
JT, from the first day I met you, I just knew that we were going to do great things, and I'm so proud of. I'm honored to be able to partner with you here on these monthly conversations with Work It Daily. And I think it's the commitment that you're making. It's the commitment from HRInterrupted and all of the followers and the viewers. And if there's one thing I want everybody to walk away with is say, first of all, being a parent, it's not easy. It's not easy. And we're not questioning, because at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. Everything that we do on these webinars is just for awareness. It's just something to consider. We've used our own self. I've used my own examples of some things that I've done well as a parent, and some areas when I made a mistake. And I'm honest. I didn't want to sit at the barbecue and say my daughter wasn't in college when everybody was bragging, because that was reflective of me. And I'm honest about that. But I had to take a step back and say, it's not about you. It's about her. And if we approach HR that way, we don't want this in our organization. We're going to do great things. I love the disruption. I love it. That's why we're called HRInterrupted. It's going to be fascinating. And I'm just so glad that we're moving in a space where we're having these conversations. We got to talk about it.
We do. And that's what 2021 is going to be all about. We're pivoting JT Talks Jobs to a complete platform where we're going to have lots more conversations like this. So expect more from us in 2021, everyone. Here's what I want you to do. Wrap up today. What was your favorite part? What was the one aha moment you said today? We want to hear about that in the comments. We always love to read it. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. You know, again, out of all this craziness came this amazing relationship with HRInterrupted and Stacey Lewis. So I am so grateful in the season of gratefulness. I'm just so happy, and I can't wait for us to come back and do this again in 2021. So I don't know what January's topic is going to be. We haven't decided yet, but I can promise you people we'll be back strong in January. Okay. All right. What do you want to close? Any final words, Stacey, to the team?
No, I was thinking of just in closing this quote by James Baldwin. I want to make sure I get it right because I love it. Everything that's changed will not be faced, but nothing can be faced. Everything that's let me pull it up. I love it. I was using it the other day. I want to say that. I want to close with this. It's from James Baldwin. Hold on. I'm going to give it to you right now. Hold on.
I know the one you're saying, but it's tricky and I can't memorize it.
Yeah, I don't want to butcher it, but it's just true. And it just talks about you can't change things unless we face them. That's really what, and so I'm excited about what we're doing. We got to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations. And for the viewers who come every month, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And please, take care of yourselves. Yep. Please give yourself permission to be at the front of the line, because when you do this, all these other things work.
I totally agree. All right. We love you all. You're the best. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you in the
Bye, everyone. Thank you. See you next one.